Hi guys, and welcome to my June wrap-up, finally. I know it's August, I know you're like, what? But I was super late putting this up, didn't really like the way I had filmed it, and then I took like 2 weeks off, and it basically turned into 3 weeks the way my filming schedule is. So, yeah, here's my June wrap-up in August, and next will be my July wrap-up. I couldn't do the July and June together. It was too many books. It was too long. Even though there was like a huge period, there was like 3 weeks in June I didn't read. I kind of clustered read a lot of books, and then kind of a lot at the very last few days of June. Because I remember being like, oh, this is the last week of June. This is my last book. But there was like 3 books I read like the last 3 days of June. The very first book I was looking for is The Giver of the Stars by Jojo Moyes. I cannot believe I cannot find it. I thought I could have sworn I bought it recently in my big book haul, but I can't find it anywhere. So that, or maybe I gave it out for somebody to read. Giver of the Stars by Jojo Moyes. I read one of her women's fiction, which was Me Before You, and when it was huge, and I didn't love it. And so I didn't want to go on with that series, but I could tell she was a very talented writer. So I was waiting for one day when she would write something that I knew, I don't know, that I really want to read. So this is completely different than her women's fiction. This is like a historical romance fiction. At least to me, it's completely different than women. The cover is beautiful for Giver of the Stars, and it is a historical fiction about back in the day when people like traveled and librarians traveled by wagon, and it was like a thing that was put on by Eleanor Roosevelt. So this book is a bit of a love letter to literacy, and Eleanor Roosevelt had a huge literacy campaign back in the day, if you didn't know. So this book follows a girl named Alice, and Alice meets this guy who sweeps her off her feet. He's wealthy, he's everything she wanted. She has some royalty or something in her bloodline, so that's why they like her. So her dad and her father are always there, and she thinks she'll be intimate with her fiance or husband once they're back in the States and settled. So they travel through England, they go on a boat, and all that happens very, like, I don't even know if it happens in the book or if you just kind of know about it. And she gets to Kentucky, and her father-in-law is just always around. And something happens, you don't really ever know, but she's never really intimate with her husband. And it's kind of disjointed them. She's stuck out here in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, where some of the poorest people in America lived at the time, still do to this day, in this rural part of Kentucky. And in comes a woman who decides that she's gonna do the library. And she joins this team of women who travel throughout the country in the mountains, delivering library books and helping people learn to read. A lot of people learn to read, which was amazing. So it's a very adventurous story, and there's a lot of stuff in it about like women's rights, and yeah, so it talks about exploitation, it talks about the misogyny, it talks about the class system that was there, it talks about the racism that's there, and because there is a girl who is black on their team that goes through some perils during the book, and then it talks about like the exploitation and the very hard lives that these people live. They're very hardworking lives, just in surviving on very little. So it really is like I said, it's really like a love letter a lot to how hard people had to work to become literate, and how hard it was to get people like information for all, and that everybody should be allowed to this information. They're allowed to and just the social impact that a library brings on everybody. And of course there's a guy who helps them because he lets them use their shed, and there's a little bit more of another romance in the whole story. So yeah, it is a historical romance, but the romance is very light, which I appreciate. It is more about Alice and the girl she meets and her going through something and growing through something. And yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. This one came out last October, I believe. So I read Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. This one came out a few years ago. The third one just came out, and I think it is a trilogy series. And the third one I actually own, so I'm excited to finish it. I have read both of the books now, the first 2, but Truly Devious is the first. It is a YA mystery. Yeah. So you jump right into a girl who is obsessed with mystery, and you're not kind of sure why she's obsessed with mystery, but she's obsessed with being a detective and solving cases, and she's obsessed with one case in very particular, and has led to her life obsession, and it gets her into this school at this academy. And at this academy, there was a murder when the school started out, and it was part of the family, and so it was a big, huge to-do. So she wants to solve this mystery, which kind of seems improbable, because like, this guy had an enormous amount of wealth to solve these mysteries, so that means he had the smartest detectives around at the time. Although she has more technology, there's more people still trying to solve this mystery, so it seems a bit improbable that a teenage girl is going to solve this. But it gets her admittance into the academy, and she meets this like cast of characters. I would say that I really enjoyed the book. I liked the book. It is not my typical cup of tea. It's a YA mystery, but I did enjoy it overall. I felt like when I finished, though, that the story felt, even though it kind of had a wrap up, it really didn't. And so the second one, I was so excited for it, and then the second one, even less of a wrap up, I think. Maybe the story as a whole with all 3 books is going to be great, but usually when you have a trilogy, you feel like there's a wrap up at each one, and I just didn't get that vibe. As well as I would have liked to know more backstory of why she's so obsessed with mysteries and murders, and you don't really know that. You just know that she is. And also the first book spends a lot of time introducing you into the mystery and what happened, and reiterates it like a lot, kind of. And that part's a little bit boring to me. I liked more of the school, the cast of characters, who she was, what she was looking into. I liked all those bits better. And so yeah, I can't wait to read the third one. Hopefully this fall sometime. Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. I love Colleen Hoover to death. But this is not my favorite series. I started with a novella of hers from the series, and I was like, oh, I didn't like it. I think I would have liked it more if I would have read the other books in the series, but now I'm thinking I'm done. Book 1. I didn't love the couple in this series. This book tells a story about a girl who like gets kicked out basically of her place because she finds out her boyfriend's cheating on her with her best friend. She moves across this road with this guy who's a musician, and he's deaf. I love the story about a deaf musician, so that part was unique, but for majority of the book, I hated this couple. I just didn't get it. And so in the end, for me, it just wasn't a great love of mine. Colleen Hoover wrote some of my like favorite books, but this for me was just like non-character mashup, and like not a series I think I'll finish. Even though I've read like half of it already, I guess, by reading the one in the novella. But yeah, it was okay. Okay, so this is the second book of this wrap-up that I know I've bought, but I must have loaned out already. But it is The Beach Read by Emily Henry. Everybody was ranting and raving about this book this spring, and it was okay. The Beach Read tells a story about a guy and a girl who are living by a lake. The girl is there for a short period, and the guy's been living there for a while. They first run into each other, and you don't know that they know each other, but it turns out they do. They had known each other in their past. They're both writers. One's a romance writer, one's a literary fiction writer. So I enjoyed the play of like them. That's how they spend time together, is they decide to write the other person's like category. So she tries to write literary fiction for her publisher, and he tries to write a romance book. I believe that's what it was. But this is like a huge theme in romance, is pushing together people for a reason, and them spending time and then realizing those people have feelings for each other, and then that they love each other, kind of thing. It is a gigantic theme in the romance world, and I personally have never met somebody with that storyline that has met and shoved each other together based on something and spent time with each other and then fell in love with each other. I don't know. I kind of get sick of the storyline sometimes, but this one just wasn't, like, I didn't care for it, I guess, the story or the characters in the end, and everybody loved it. Everybody was crazy about it, so I couldn't get a hold of it at my library, so I went out and purchased it, and I was like, it's gonna be a good purchase, because it seems like every time I buy a book before I've read it, I end up not liking it. And it was okay. I think I gave it 3 stars overall, but for me, it wasn't as big of a hype as everybody said it was. But I did loan it out, so I liked it enough to like say, you guys should read this, but everybody else seemed to liked it. I don't know what was wrong with me. Maybe I was in a mood. I didn't absolutely love the story in the end, and I didn't love the like push together of the writings, and I thought it was slow paced at times where it didn't need to be. He kind of has a lot of mystery background luggage, but hers is kind of not there as well too. I hate when like the characters are uneven, I guess. Yeah, moving on to the next book. Book number 5. So book number 5 is The Upside of Falling. This came out in February of this year of 2020, so another book. It is by Alex Light. I think it said it was a Wattpad edition, but I heard about it here on YouTube. I heard it was just like this wholesome YA story, and that's exactly what it was. This very wholesome romance story about falling in love and falling out of love. A girl who's getting teased by a former best friend. So this girl you kind of want to one up. So she says, I have a boyfriend on impulse. And then this guy is in this position where he needs to have a girlfriend, I guess, to round out his life or something. He's too focused on his sports and too focused on school and could care less to have a girlfriend. So he steps in and says that he's her boyfriend, and it's like a fake relationship trope. I really liked the characters overall, though. I liked the characters the whole story, even though it was cheesy, even though it was stereotypical YA teen. There was something I truly enjoyed about the story. It was very wholesome. It was exactly what it said it was going to be on the back of the book, which I can really appreciate. There were no surprises. It's a very short, fast story. I think I gave this 4 stars. I don't think this is a book I would personally purchase and reread, but I gave it 4 stars because it was done very, very well. It was very cute. It's wholesome. There was nothing dramatic in it. There wasn't anything hard in it. It was very easy to read. So if you need something like entertaining, that's easy and thoughtless, this would be one, especially if you're into YA romances. This is one to read. The next book is The Wives by Tara Fisher. This one came out last December and everybody was talking about it, and I was late to the game because I'm not a huge mystery fan. But my friend read it and she's like, you have to read this. So I went ahead and checked it out and I read it like that. I think I read it in a day. It is such a fast read. It is about a girl, you first meet her and she's like, I don't know how I got into this relationship. I was completely normal before this, but I'm in a relationship where a guy has multiple wives. He didn't divorce his first wife because he's going to be with me to have kids, and then I couldn't have kids, so he has another wife. And you go through this whole dramatic roller coaster. Of course, there's a flip ending. I loved it, though. I gave it a 4 out of stars, but I don't want to give anything away. I would suggest check it out, even if you're not a mystery, thriller, suspense lover. This one's super easy to read, super fast. I love that, and it's addicting, and it was done really, really well. I read Joe and Laurie by Margaret Stohl and Melissa De La Cruz. This came out June. I was given this early, and I didn't read it early on NetGalley, but I love the story. It was really fun. It is the story about Joe and Laurie from Little Women. This is one of the stories, sometimes when you read a retelling or if you read like an addition to book of a classic, sometimes those books can stand on their own. Like you could read them without having read the classic and love those characters, or read them and like still love them for whatever reason, even if you've just like watched the movie or something. But this one, I highly suggest either like watching the movie or reading the actual Little Women or something. I don't think you'll get as much gratifying out of it if you don't know Joe and Laurie already. The very beginning of the book does quite a bit of a time of setting up kind of a Little Women scenario almost, where you're getting to know Little Women a lot. And then later on in the book, you get into the adventure of Joe and Laurie, of them when they go to New York. And that's the whole thing. They go to New York, they spend time together. So it's a different Joe and Laurie story. It's in between, I guess she wrote Little Women in like 2 parts. So it's supposed to be in between those two because Joe is the writer and she's trying to write her next new novel. It was really fun. I loved the Joe and Laurie series. I love that she kept true to Little Women, but had a bit of a twist ending and created something of their own. Both the ladies authors did. So I love that as well. I really, really enjoyed the book. I think I gave it 3 stars overall because I don't think everybody would enjoy it. I just did. I liked that a lot. I like these kind of books. I love Little Women. I loved reading it. It was a lot of fun for me. I gave it 3 stars overall, probably a 3.5 star book. But if you haven't read Little Women or don't like it, I would not suggest reading the book. Also, I think they spent a little too much time setting up Little Women in the beginning when the story was mostly about Joe and Laurie. I just felt like the beginning was kind of unnecessary in a way. I don't know. to me, I thought I was getting into one kind of story, and then the story actually took off to what I thought the story would be. So for me, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if I really liked that part of the book. I felt like it was separate somehow. I don't know. Maybe it was just in my mind. Okay, and then the last two were Don't You Forget About Me and If I've Never Met You by Mhairi McFarlane. It says how to pronounce her name on the back. Pronounce Mhairi. McFarlane? Maybe her name is pronounced Mhairi. Maybe it's Mhairi McFarlane? Is that how you say it? Mhairi? I'm not sure. So the first one I read was Don't You Forget About Me, because this is her newer or older book. Let's see how old it was. This one came out July of last year, and then this, ooh. Okay, yeah. This one came out July of last year, and then this one came out in June of this year. So I read this one first because I've heard good things about these books, so I wanted to get into them. So this one is about a girl who gets fired from a job, and then the same day her boyfriend is cheating on her, so she's just having a really rough day. So then she takes a job at a bartender as like a lieu of a friend to like, I think the bar is just opening and they needed a bartender her first night, and then she does really well and gets hired. But the first night she meets the guy who's the owner of the bar, and she used to know him and used to be like in love with him, right? Hence the title, Don't You Forget About Me. It's a really funny book. It is a fast page turner. I really enjoyed reading it. I thought the middle where he decides he has not forgotten about her was like a little, I kind of got mad at him for a minute there. And then also, I really loved the amount of characters in this book. She put in a lot of characters, which is kind of unusual for a romance read. Usually there's not so many characters, there's very few, or just a lot of them don't have a large personality. But I love this book. There were a lot of characters and I had fun with it. And so she did it. She pulled it off. I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. And I think I gave this one 4 stars. This one I gave 4 stars. So yeah, I went ahead and bought it. This one I gave 5 stars. I absolutely love. This one is If I Never Met You. This one, Don't You Forget About Me. Don't worry, I had the song singing through my head the entire stinking time I read it. So this one, If I Never Met You, is about a girl whose boyfriend decides to break up with her out of the middle of nowhere when she is just planning to have a baby with him. She's like this really confident, cool girl who doesn't need to get married, and she's been with this guy forever, and she thinks we don't need to get married, but we've talked about having babies, so they've decided to have a baby, and she's really there. She's really ready at this point. And then her boyfriend breaks up with her instead when she goes to have the conversation with her. And then a month or 2 later, she finds out he has impregnated somebody else and is in a relationship with somebody else, which is shocking to her. So that's where she finds out it stemmed off from the relationship. During that time, she decides she needs to have a boyfriend to like get past him and also just like not look pathetic, I guess, to him. So there's another guy, she works at a law firm, there's another guy who wants to impress his bosses. So this is a fake trope relationship, but I think the author did it really, really well. So she goes and takes pictures. He just wants somebody there to look like he's a stable guy, to look like he's well-rounded so he can move on up in his business, which is, I think he's a lawyer as well. I don't really remember, but yeah, the girl, I loved both of the characters throughout, and I thought she did a really good job writing angst in this book. So I think I gave this one 5 stars overall. I really, really liked both of these. They were such good reads. Loved every minute of them. So yeah, highly suggest these from June. There is the end of my June wrap up. Hope you enjoyed it here in August. I will be putting out my July wrap ups next, and my August TBR and new in books, and probably a book haul. Bye. I'll see you guys next time.